school board meeting. And the first item on the agenda is public comment. So if we have anybody in the room interested in making public comment or anyone online, this is a chance for the board to hear from the members of the public about things that are on the agenda and even things that might not be on the agenda, a chance for the board to just hear community perspective on our schools. So, and this is where the board listens and does not engage with the public, because this is a chance for us to really hear. Anyone want to make public comment?
You would.
Oh,
You're not public comment yet. The agenda.
I do love the motivation. Thank you very much.
Whether there is something else you'd like to tell me.
Talking. Do we have anyone raising their hand online? You use the raise hand function if you are on Zoom wanting to make.
And we have another public comment after the budget discussion,
There
right?
will be one after the budget in case members of the public want to comment on the draft budget for the board to hear.
There's no.
Okay, well then now, next item on the agenda is our consent agenda, where the board passes just a number of documents and things all at once to help save time on in our meeting agenda. And this is usually basically minutes from previous meetings. This one does include the tuition for the next school year for those who are interested. You can find that there. And if any board member wants to pull something off the agenda, the consent agenda for discussion, you certainly can do so. Having said that, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I usually do, but I forgot my laptop at work because that came in from stuff. I don't feel like I should make.
So moved.
Thank you, Scott. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion from members of the board? Okay, all those in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. And now I'm very excited to welcome our students from Montpelier High School up to the front to share with us the work that they've been doing on the future of education.
These all are making their way up here. We have Gideon, Olivia, Allegra, sit right over here.
So yes, that
Tyler
was
and
on camera.
Because, and you can sit, Gideon, come sit right down here by Otis. So you can be on camera and the mics will pick up your voices. Super cool. On the tables. Matt McLean and I have had the privilege of working with these 5 humans for all fall, and they are the most marvelous students. As I told them the other day, it was the absolute shining moments of my fall this year, and I love getting to know them. They've been doing a lot of work that they want to share with the board, and Senator Perchlik is the lone senator for you all to talk to at the moment. Hopefully more people will come in, and Senator Perchlik will call them over the table. So feel free to talk to them about what they heard, as well as the board. That's the reason why we have
We want
the senators and reps here with the mics so that they can be heard and all of that kind of stuff. All right, Olivia, you starting us off?
I'm starting us off.
Who's starting us up?
I'm
Allegra
starting us
starting us up. Go for it.
So we are representing the Vermont Future of Education team, and we're hoping to present the same presentation to the legislature in February. Sorry. So we were composed of 30 students from 3 different high schools, Randolph, White River, and Montpelier. And we met for over, I think, 12 hours over the course of the fall. And we were here to discuss the potential action of the redistricting task force, which is no longer a thing. But our task was to create one regional youth adult team representing the diversity of Central Vermont. And over the course of the fall, we collected and analyzed data from the broader school communities. So we came up with questions to do at circles in those meetings, and we brought them back to our communities, where we had circles with both students and teachers and members of the community. And the goal of those circles was to shape a shared vision for education. And what we found in those circles was a very similar vision across all 3 of our school districts. And the goal of this was to advocate for youth voice in decision-making around education, because that task force that was originally appointed had no members that were current students or retired educators, which left a major gap in representation of people who currently experience our school systems and who will be directly affected by the changes being proposed. That was our group, missing, I think, like 12 of us.
It's the White River team.
Yeah, White River wasn't able to make it.
So here's a framework we use to collect our data. So first, we start with some team building activities with White River and Orange Southwest to sort of get to know everybody and like get to know the team we were working with. And then we, at our own schools, had listening sessions. And so at Montpelier, we had separate student and staff ones, and we asked questions. We asked 3 questions. What makes a great school? What is our school resisting that would be important to our education? And what does education that prepares you for the future look like? And we got some very good answers. And next we analyzed these answers and drew themes and found areas of importance that we used to make these slides that we're presenting to you.
So the 5 main points that we found when we thought about the question, what makes a great future-facing school, were academic freedom, a variety of opportunities, real-world community awareness and involvement, support belonging to a strong school community, and consistent expectations. And we'll dive deeper into those now.
Yeah, the first year that we unanimously agreed on between our schools was that classes should have more relevance beyond high school. And we wanted generalized credits achieved through choice-based classes, along with more opportunity for difficult classes that we can dive further into our interests. We also wanted more hands-on learning, more variety of teaching methods for students who learn differently than a traditional method, and balanced screen time, balancing virtual and working on computers with handwritten assignments. And all in all, just helping kids to create their academic goals and pursue them.
So in terms of variety of opportunities, we thought about travel and cultural opportunities like field trips, real life skill development, cooking, personal finance management. These classes might not always be accessible at present, but many students indicated they would like to see more of them. They can like help students in their life beyond high school. We talked about soft skills like team building, social skills, public speaking. We said they're just as important as the rest of the curriculum, but maybe not always prioritized. There's also more opportunities and communications around post-secondary pathways like college, your career, the military, so that everyone knows what their options are and no one feels unprepared. Learning through presentation with actual practitioners, so experienced individuals teaching interested students. And then we said all of the above should start way earlier, like in elementary or middle school, so that there's a strong foundation for students by the time they reach high school.
We also talked a lot about real world community awareness and involvement. So talking about relevant, current, international, and local events. So making sure that everyone is aware of the world that they are going to step into, both locally and globally. We talked about mandatory community service and designing your own service through flexible pathways. That is a required, that's like a graduation requirement in some districts, but not in most of them. And we thought that was a really important one. Learning and practicing how to discuss different opinions and perspectives respectfully. So even if you disagree, learning how to manage that in a polite manner. And learning to decipher misinformation. So specifically online and AI, especially now as that becomes like a greater issue. And have consistent local community meetings. So having more student involvement in things like the school board meetings.
Okay. So we also talked about having a sense of belonging to a strong school community where more students agreed that they wanted to feel connected to a community that's where students are encouraged to share their feelings and opinions and to develop foundational relationships between all community members, like student and staff relationships between each other, staff and staff, and student to student relationships. Also to create more safe and inclusive spaces, especially White River spoke to this, and where adults empower student voices within the community to raise leaders and students help empower each other instead of competing with each other.
Along with that, we wanted to include consistent and reasonable expectations where all students were given the opportunity to succeed. More attention should be put on student accommodations and individual student needs, so everyone can feel represented and get access to the help they need. Also, we want to allow for students to fail safely and learn from their mistakes, so we can make sure that school is a safe space where students can like I said just now, learn from their mistakes and work better. As well as that, to ensure communication between students and teachers to foster good relationships that enable for effective education. And giving students preparation for the real world, like Otis said, with the soft skills and other things. And like the title of the slide, consistent expectations to keep students like climbing for more knowledge.
Yeah, we wanted to share with you the work that we've done. We wanted you to ask us any questions that you have about the work that we've done.
That applies to anyone.
Anyone in the audience as
Yeah.
well, just kind of to have this section as a discussion.
So have you had a chance to talk to that task force? Like,
We haven't, no, and I heard that it was disbanded, right?
Yeah.
So it was
Yes.
disbanded.
Yes, yeah, we are planning to go to the State House to present in late January, early February. The date's not decided yet.
And we did present this at the city council meeting a few weeks ago.
Yeah, me and Allegra.
We didn't have a presentation yet, but it was a rough version.
Just add my 2 cents, I do appreciate the fact that you guys like advocate for adding any of this to the elementary and middle schools and start.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, thanks. I thought it was great. Good job. One question I had about the balanced screen time. Do you feel like it's balanced now?
No.
And which way is it unbalanced if you don't feel it's?
We definitely noticed that it's a lot more digital
Yeah.
work, even with like teachers being concerned about AI and everything. Or, yeah,
I think pretty much every,
every class is just all work on computers.
which I think is good for a little bit, but I think it has a really negative effect.
Yeah,
For those
especially handwriting. I feel like handwriting has worsened. We talked about that between our schools as well, and
Yeah.
like not knowing how to sign your name in cursive, things like that.
And I had,
Same across the board. Guys are Gideon and Otis and Skylar are 9th and 10th graders versus 12th graders. Do you all feel the same?
Yeah, I feel like you have a lot of screen time.
I mean, I think earlier than that, even like middle school,
Mm.
it's really prevalent.
Does
A
that
lot of-
go as far as like reading a book too, or just your assignment?
We have digital assignments in
Yeah.
sociology as well.
Like like the articles that we read, the PDFs.
It's pretty rare that you're handed like a book unless you're in an English class, part of a summative.
I guess that's what I was thinking, like all your English classes, are you reading a book or?
Yeah, those are books.
Yeah, we-
Yeah.
But like a math textbook.
We don't have those.
They don't.
Yeah, yeah, I was
And
shocked.
all of our
There's
homework is
textbooks.
all of our homework is online.
There's textbooks and a handful of science courses.
Uh-huh. I know.
I was trying to take notes and you had 5 domains to start with. What was the 5th one?
So let me go back.
Yeah, you can go back to that slide.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the 5th one was consistent expectation, consistent and reasonable expectation.
Consistently
Consistent and
reasonable
reasonable
expectations. Can you say a little bit more about what that means and how you got there?
Can you jump in?
Yeah.
So making sure that the same expectations are consistent in all your classes, so if you want a 4, this is how you go above and beyond, and that's really clear, and that makes sense to everyone, and it's achievable. So going in, you know what you need to do well, and you have the structure to do it. And also like, in all your classes, it's not, you need to do this to get a 3 or 4, and you need to do way more, in this one, you're not told that, I guess, is what that was about.
I had 2 quick questions. One is, how did you all get on to, were you like, was there like an application? Were you nominated? Were there lines of people and you had to like?
Drag them. Up for Learning is an association in Vermont
Uh-huh.
that works to lift student voice.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a
As
staff member of the
facilitator.
organization,
The
so
Up for
I
Learning.
help out a little bit as a facilitator in some of the meetings as well.
And they are pretty prominent.
Yeah.
In many schools. And they were working with Randolph, which is Orange.
Oh, it's just.
Yeah, Orange Southwest. And, Mike Clark is the superintendent there, he's a good buddy of mine.
Uh-huh.
And he wanted to bring Central Vermont students together.
Gotcha.
And so he reached out to our regional group and any of us could join. And so it sounded really interesting to me personally on just a personal note, I get to hang out with cool kids all fall.
Yeah.
I think student voice is super important in this work and it's missing currently.
Mhm.
And so I was right there with Mike on that. I hooked up with Matt McLean, who's our director of flexible pathways, and he
Yes.
said, right on, let's do it. And we just put it out to the student body and we had 6 originally, but we ended with these wonderful 5 humans.
Fantastic, fantastic.
I think it's good that we also had a diversity between the grades as well.
Yeah. And I'll just add the cool thing, and I've said this like a billion times to them, so they like, Allegra and Olivia got to drive with me, so they've heard this like a bazillion times at this point. But the cool thing was with Randolph, White River and Montpelier High School, that is a very diverse population of kids.
Yeah.
And these came from not just Montpelier High School thoughts, these came
Yeah.
because they all brought back similar ideas from very diverse schools. And it was eye-opening to me as well, the different opportunities that kids have in
Mhm.
their buildings that they spoke of.
And the lack of.
Particularly the lack of in
Yeah.
other buildings.
Yeah, the flexible pathways opportunities at Montpelier are like very unique. When
Yes.
comparing it with the other schools we worked with, we were very surprised here that they didn't have those opportunities.
Mm.
Yes.
The other question I had is, there were a lot of suggestions to add, and almost across the board, I agree. I'm curious, there were fewer suggestions for what to remove, right, from the student experience. And so, not to put you on the spot, but are there things other than digital assignments, things that like you feel you could do with less of in order to make space for some of the suggestions?
I mean, I guess going along with the like generalized credits, I think less like to get a science credit, you have to take this class, even if you think you're gonna fail it. That's the only thing that comes to my mind, I guess.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Well, we just heard how the process was for how you all got here. I'm curious what inspired you to answer the call when Libby and Matt put it out there.
I didn't know that there was redistricting going on, and I was kind of like upset that I didn't know, but like the graduation requirements were gonna completely change, and I kind of wanted to do what I could to be involved in that process.
For me, it was like getting to talk to students from other schools, just something like that. I really appreciate, so that's like what drew me to it, but.
Yeah.
I tend to do work like this a lot, but I hadn't really done work within my school district, so I was really excited to do that and talk to students that I hadn't met before. So that's one reason I wanted to participate.
Did you have anybody apply that could or asked to be in the group that couldn't be taken?
No, I don't think so.
It was pretty much open.
Just us.
We're the only ones that kind of followed up with the email.
Tyler, it sounded like you wanted to share what inspired you.
Oh, well, probably I'm really interested in like youth voice and leadership, and I thought this was a really cool opportunity. So, yeah.
I don't know, it was just like a new experience that I wanted to try.
Fantastic. It's a great reason. I'm also curious about, there was, I think it was also on the consistent expectations slide about failing safely. What does that look like to you?
Failing earlier and it being okay.
I feel like we spoke a little bit about at Montpelier, there's retakes for tests,
Mhm.
and that a lot of students feel that like it's okay to fail because they can just make it up and their zero is erased, and we aren't really comfortable actually having grades that are lower, I guess. I think Libby could speak a little bit to this as well.
We had a really good conversation about that one day.
Mm.
I probably got my voice in there too much, but it's our kids. I was speaking about our kids here in Montpelier and Roxbury. Our kids are awesome. And they're set up in situations where they succeed a lot. You know, we've got successful skiers right in front of you. We've got very successful kids in front of us. And there's hundreds of behind them. And I don't know how much they actually fail until they get to adulthood. It's kind of smack them in the face, or they get to college and then smack them in the face. And we've heard that feedback before. And so how do we set them up for a really rigorous environment that's also really safe, where Gideon can go in and take a risk and not succeed at that risk and know it's okay. You know, no, you're not gonna get shut out tomorrow, you're gonna get another shot at this rigorous thing that you're really engaged in. So when I see like fail safely, that's what I would like to see, that we're engaging kids in situations that are really hard for them and they're really engaged in to do well, and they have to figure it out by trial and error and, you know, that kind of thing. I don't know how much we do of that.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit more to that too. Like, I feel like I've noticed within the high school, when students who usually excel academically and then they are close to failing a class, they get incredibly like discouraged and then don't know how to pick themselves back up from that. So
I think it's really common having really high achieving kids, and then
you
like
take,
maybe junior year, you take your first really hard class and you get a 1.5, and it's like, oh my
You have
god,
no
the
idea what
world
to
is
do.
gonna end.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah.
And it's not.
I don't think it should be set up that way with the
Yeah.
high school system.
Did you? Someone had their.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting question, because I agree, and I think that, I think it also comes with other issues like grade inflation. There's a lot of people who see, you know, B+ as like the end of the world. And if everyone's getting A's, it's become kind of meaningless. So I mean, I think it's a huge problem. I'm just wondering how a particular district deals with it when it's occurring everywhere, and like, how do we do it without disadvantaging our kids, where we really like, how to go to it, because A's should be hard to get. But when the expectation is that everyone is getting A's, and you're competing for, you know, limited college spots with schools where, yeah, I mean, in some cases, people are paying like literally like 7 figures for a college coach to get you into the college of your choice. Like, what, like, how do we as a district like address that without disadvantaging kids in a world where that is kind of that crazy?
For me, there's a few answers there. Like the 5 of them and you, Jim, were really focused on grades. I don't care about grades, quite honestly. I truly don't, because they're arbitrary. They're subjective and arbitrary. And so what I care more about is the rigorousness of the learning and the engagement that the kids find in that. And so when I talk about it, I'm talking about what tasks what challenges are we putting in front of kids? What problems are they solving? Not projects are they doing, but what problems are they solving? And I'm not sure we're there yet. And I would also say that colleges these days, and Matt McLean can talk very articulately about this, are not looking for necessarily the straight A's, because I just read an article the other day, Harvard gets, what, 7,000 applicants of 4.0 students?
Yeah.
And so what distinguishes the kids, what's gonna distinguish them is that Gideon and Skylar were pages, and that Skylar wants to go abroad and, you know, to France next year as a sophomore, and that you're an up for learning facilitator as a junior and senior. All of these well-rounded opportunities are what's going to differentiate Olivia, who I think just applied to many schools, that she said the other day, from a kid who spent their time taking every AP class and took the SAT 7 times. And so, like, that's what's differentiating the kids these days. It's not the grades, it's what they're doing behind the scenes and the schedule they're putting for themselves out, what they're trying, what they're diving into. And so how are we creating those opportunities? And one of my major concerns with the graduation proficiency or changes, and I know Jason shares this concern with me, is that they are going back to the proficiencies that we had as kids, because it worked for us. And that's not what our kids need right now. So that's what I think is, like, if we can get kids not talking about grades, but talking about the problems they're solving for the community and the world around them consistently and articulately, then I think that our kids will still have a much better shot at getting into elite colleges. Because we have this fallacy that transcripts all look the same. They look completely different across the nation. Like, transcripts don't look the same at all. And so some kids are getting transcripts with complete A's and B's and things on it. Some get 4s and 5s, some get pass fail. So, like, there's so many different high schools and types of high schools that colleges don't look at one single transcript. So the fallacy of kids need the grade to get into these places is just that, a fallacy.
but just to back up, I mean, is that truly giving kids the opportunity to fail? Because then you kind of have a baseline where like, everyone gets the 400 the 1500 on their SAT, and then they have to go start their own NGO and, you know, learn to play divine chips. And yeah, I mean, I'm being somewhat exaggerating, but then like, where is the opportunity to really like have room to be a flawed learning 16, 17-year-old without having this like perfect application where not only do you get all the grades, but you also, you know, save the world by the time you're in.
Solve some problems.
So I
Solve some complex
I
problems.
see we have our principal, Jason Gingles, ready to chime in here, but I also see Allegra and Olivia. Did you also had?
I just have a really quick thing about that. You go first.
Okay, I was just gonna add on to what Libby said about, we spoke to it a little bit in our slides, that I think that a motivator for those A's and B's also, especially within Montpelier, is motivated by competition with other students. I think reducing that aspect of competition to be more collaborative would help with students not feeling that they need to win to get all A's to compete for that valedictorian title.
I was gonna respond to what you said about where it actually is the opportunity to fail safely. I think that lies in all of the things you talked about like other pathways. So things like a CBL or like an extracurricular or like community involvement through a nonprofit or volunteering. Like all of that is something that you're not given a 95 or 100 or a 40. Like that's not how you're graded, but you're graded on what you did with it and what you took upon yourself to get involved with. And I think Libby was saying that makes a difference in colleges, and that's something that is you're graded on what you personally can do, not like how intelligent or the grade that you got. I think that's where you can fail safely.
Yeah, it's a social opportunity that you might not have done before or feel comfortable doing.
Right, and if
It's
you
the whole
don't
point
do
of
well at
PLS
it, you
is
still did it. Like you still went, even if you didn't do a good job, because there's no tracking on it. That was just my
Well,
thought.
well said, right? And I think I'm gonna point to Allegra and Olivia just because you've had more experience at school in the process of failing Safe Gym, that, you know, one of the 4 pillars that you all talk about as part of the Montpelier-Roxbury process, right, is having limitless opportunities. And part of that opportunity, Jim, is to fail safe in a way that we don't let students fall through the cracks to what we might think is fail by grades. But failing safe is about what they're talking about is the opportunity to try different experiences to get to the place where they want to go. And I'm going to pick on Olivia for a minute. How many knee surgeries?
4.
4 knee surgeries. So Olivia has learned through that process how to, air quote, fail safely and be resilient, have grit, whatever kind of word we want to use to
Yeah,
continue.
for me, it was failing through sports, I guess. It's in different forms for everyone.
Still winning state championship. Thank you very much.
Well said.
Played in goal this year, but
2, continue to move forward, right? And I don't think you failed in any of that. I know you didn't fail in any of that, right? But you figured out a way to continue to move forward and achieve your personal goals through different experiences.
definitely.
And I think what's missing from the graduation requirements, if we bring it back to that, is that opportunity for what students went and presented about that you saw today, right? It's very pigeonholed, it's bucketed, it's old school, if we want a cliche, and it takes away student choice, it takes away student engagement, and it puts us back 30 years to what is prescribed versus looking fast forward to what can be done and what is best for our students. When these students met with our faculty, with Libby, maybe during a solo block of one early morning, they were talking about failing safe. And Allie Tarwater, our esteemed music teacher, talked about how many auditions she failed as part of her process to become a professional musician. That is part of her life, right? And it's part of failing safe, is to learn how to audition, get back up the next time, and fail again and again until you get the gig. And that's what they are learning through this process, and that's what we don't want to take away from them. It's just my 2 cents.
Other questions?
Yeah, first of all, thank you. I'm really impressed by and you know, we all go through these process for like reflection and improvement, and I still saw things in there that I was really surprised by. And I was really pleasantly surprised to talking to students from other schools, because I think we often in Montpelier-Roxbury, and like I'm sure this happens at every school, we like talk amongst ourselves, and so that wouldn't really have given you guys an opportunity to think about things that you hadn't seen before. And a lot of the goals of this education and transformation is about improving equity so that students have access to more equal opportunities. So I wonder if each of you would want to like quickly say, is there anything that like surprised you from talking with the other schools, anything that stood out? Because I think it's also great to think about maybe maybe you all took something back from meeting with those two that we could use, or maybe they took something from you guys that we could use, but I'm glad you heard from other schools, and I just wondered if there's anything that kind of stands out. It's like, wow, that was kind of something I didn't realize that they did at that school, or something that that school doesn't have that I wish they did. Not trying to pick on anybody, but just cross-pollination of schools, I think is really good.
I have a really big one, and I think we kind of all share this one. I think there's a lot of kids at Montpelier who maybe wouldn't have made it through the school system if we didn't have like flexible pathways or other ways to graduate. And like White River, a lot of those other schools, they have none of that. And if you can't perform well in that straight line, this is what you have to take to graduate, then it's just like, that's it. And that was my biggest takeaway, that they don't have those opportunities.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway was probably it made me reconsider how I take for granted the relationships that we have at Montpelier between students and like teachers and stuff. I feel like there are a lot of very strong relationships that students have with their teachers here because it's a very close community. And compared to White River, they did not speak to that at all. It was the complete opposite. And I think it was just surprised me, not like, I can't envision myself being in a school environment where I don't feel supported by my teachers.
Yeah, I agree to both of them said. It was surprising by how little extracurriculars it seemed like other schools had, and how the environments of the different schools seemed to differ a lot from ours, where everybody, in the most part, gets along and has friends, and like the teachers support them. But at those schools, it did not seem like that. It seemed sort of more like a harsh environment.
Yeah, some of the students like showed feelings of like resentment towards the school system or their teachers, and like, yeah, it makes me appreciate like having helpful teachers and like a useful school system at Montpelier that I can like really be supported by.
Resentment's a good word. I think that's an accurate word.
I think it's a very accurate
Yeah.
word, unfortunately.
It was really surprising.
Ms. Skylar, is it?
Yeah,
That's getting in.
sorry.
Oh, you're. Go ahead.
Yeah, there was definitely a very stark contrast between our two schools, and even I like thought Montpelier was a small school, but White River is really small and suffering from a lot of problems that we take for granted, I think. And so, yeah, I agree with what Otis was saying. There was a lot of like students and even teachers who didn't really like their school, the way it was run.
I think also community, like a couple of spoke to like, maybe not being very like, I guess it's hard to put this in words, like equitable towards maybe teachers who are not the norm, gender.
Yeah, there was a transgender
Right.
teacher from White River who spoke to not being respected by staff members or other students or the parents in the community too.
Which is just, I don't know, I think we're pretty lucky to have like zero tolerance for that sort of. Thank you.
Did you have a question?
Oh,
really?
I do have one other question. You talked about opportunities and you just talked about it again now, but I just got back from the State House and the Governor's State of the State, talked a lot about educational opportunities and how we compare that to valuing local schools. I don't know if this came up at all, or like if the students at White River, which is a decent sized town, but a smaller school, if they talked about it all, or you all talked about it all, the value of a local school. Or was it, and how a larger school provides more opportunities?
We did. We talked about how it wasn't about the size of the school, but like the values and also the people in power at that school. I think you would have a really good take on this. Like, remember when you talked about it's like bigger schools, it's easier to feel disconnected. Like maybe there's more opportunities. Maybe the football team is way better, but it's harder for a single student to feel supported by every single person in the building, which I think makes a huge difference in that person's success.
Yeah, and with a lot more students in classrooms, it's harder for teachers to have that like close connection with students, to be able to, like for Libby, to be able to pick us out and be like, oh, I taught Olivia in 7th grade basketball. I remember her. I want to see if she wants to be a part of this opportunity. It's like at larger schools, it might be more difficult to have connections like that.
I mean, like here, we walk in the door, Mr. Gingle was there every single morning. He knows every single person's name. He can tell if someone's having a hard morning and he knows what to do to turn that morning around. And I think that that is like one of the most important reasons for people to come to school, is to come there and be like, I am wanted here. And I think that it's really easy for that feeling to get lost in a bigger, maybe less local school.
But then again, there are always students who would benefit from a larger school environment for the better football teams and for
Yeah.
the more access to AP courses, the students
Yeah.
who are more rigorous with their academics. It really depends.
There's definitely trade-offs.
Right, I think that's what we're struggling with, that kind of balance. Because if you talked about educational opportunities, be able to take more electives, what are your choices for AP classes or just other electives? And at the same time, all these values of smaller schools that you talked about.
I mean, I think those values, you can bring them to a larger platform, but it takes a lot more work to keep them in place.
And yet, didn't you just say that the larger school in this group felt more known than the small?
Yeah, you did actually. And I guess it's hard to think about that because it's in this
Yeah.
small.
It
private
has
school,
to
but yeah.
do with how the school's run in Missouri.
No, you're absolutely right. I agree. Yeah.
I think we think of ourselves as the smallest, and we're not.
Well, it also said, just because you're here and you asked, and I get to add on to that. I think it's what the choices that are made. I mean, it kind of begs to what Tina just said around, it's the choices we make, right? So we have an incredibly strong flexible pathways piece that this school board has committed significant funding to, as you well know, as a parent in our
Yeah.
community, right? I live in Jericho. There's significant money there as well. Like, it's not a money thing, it's not a size thing, and they have not funded flexible pathways in that school. That's a choice that they have made. And so that has nothing to do with small or big. It's a choice that the leaders have made. And so there's lots of different ways we can talk about equity that has more to do with choices leaders have made or choices communities have made over whether it's a small school or a large school. Sometimes that fits in, sure, but not all the time.
I have another question.
I wonder too, like, all of you at the Montpelier school system, as far as I know, have gone to one elementary, one middle, and now one high school. And I don't know about those two other school districts, but just from their names, I can guess. One is Orange Southwest. So that to me says there's funnels and more schools coming in. So there's not those relationships formed, that community formed, more resentment maybe formed or whatever have you. And I don't know about Randolph. Again, that is Orange Southwest.
That's Randolph,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
What's the other one?
White River.
I don't know how that funnel works and how many communities belong to White River. But I think, I'm just saying that's another differentiation point, that those schools are made up of more than one silo and you are one silo. How is White River made up? I don't know.
There's several towns in White River.
Yeah.
It's the Hartford.
No, it's not Hartford, it's, what is it? Royalton, yeah, South Royalton and. Yeah.
Chelsea's.
So would that be part of the discussion? I'm curious. Or did that like come up at all with anything?
It didn't really come up, but I mean, I know like CVU, it's a big school, lots of funnels, and I think that the majority of the people I know there have felt that same level of community involvement and engagement from staff and teachers, and I think that that again speaks to what Libby said about choices.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
You did
For sharing it out. Welcome to stick around if you'd like. The budget presentation, which is the next item on the agenda. Libby and Mike will be presenting the third draft budget.
Tough act to follow.
Kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a relatively short presentation for y'all today. I'll flip through a few slides since this is now, for center person, this is our third draft of the budget. So our next board meeting, the board will need to vote on tonight. So we're almost there. Just a little overview. We'll do the timeline. Got the glossary of terms in here if anybody needs it, the budget discussion and next steps. And just a reminder to the school board and the community that in the appendix, which is at the very end of this presentation, are all the slides from all the presentations. So there's one stop shopping for people. we are here, the third draft, almost to the fourth draft, almost to the finish line. And then working in February to really educate the community about what the budget's all about. Here's our glossary of terms, just in case anybody wants it to flip back to quickly. Look at that beautiful human right there, looking at that caterpillar.
I was gonna say the beautiful caterpillar.
The kid, the curls on that kid. And so there's still a few unknowns in our budget.
Great.
That's why we do this, for the kids. The only unknown that we have right now is from the negotiations with two unions. So here's our budget at a glance where we are right now, and Mike, jump in for anything. The board challenged us last time to decrease the tax impact. So we did that by a few different ways. One, we now have our LTW ADM locked in, and thanks to the obsessive work of Nick Connor and our partners with Measure Ed, our LTW is at 1909.88, which is a significant increase from the first budget presentation. And every student there, every weighted student counts quite a bit. So to get to 1909, Mike threw a party and is offering Nick all kinds of compensation for it. We also, Mike also looked at the non-tax revenues, and the board will remember, and Mike, jump in if I say this incorrectly, that he originally budgeted 90% of what we can anticipate our extraordinary costs will come back as, using this calculator given to us by the Agency of Education. We upped that to 95% in this budget presentation, give or take a few percentage points.
We'll fit 100 minutes.
So we increased our revenue just a little bit there. And so now our adjusted equalized residential tax rate is $1.61, which is about a penny less per taxpayers prior to the CLA. Do you want to add anything to that?
We also took a little bit of cost out in that one position.
Yep, we're using some attrition to our benefit.
Yep.
So that makes the percentage what?
You can't see that, Tina? I'm sorry.
I
It's a decrease of 0.41% for our equalized residential tax rate, which is before the CLA. Okay, so we've decreased the things that we can decrease, and this is a relatively level program budget. We are taking advantage of some attrition and making a couple changes staffing wise, but nothing that is going to really change. There's Mr. Casey coming in. Come on up, Mr. Casey, you're just in time. Have a seat at the table right there, sir, right in front of me. You got a name tag and everything.
I was watching on Orca, so I could.
Oh,
I
yes.
got to play that.
Very smart. So just a reminder of the CLA, we had a big conversation as a board last time. It's to ensure at the most basic level that towns, not individuals, but towns pay their fair share of taxes by looking at appraised values and what houses would actually sell for. The last reappraisal in Roxbury was 2022. The last reappraisal in Montpelier was 2023. We now have the official CLAs that are different from the last budget presentation. So the CLA came in Montpelier at 122 adjusted statewide CLA came in at 122.27% in Montpelier. So it was slightly higher than the last slide the last budget presentation we had. And Roxbury unfortunately came in slightly lower than what we showed in the last budget presentation at 94.8%. The CLA has significantly impacts what residents will actually pay for the tax rate. So that brings the Montpelier tax rate increase is a nickel with the CLA. So it's just 5 cents increase, and at Roxbury, it's 40 cents increase with their CLA, which makes a 4% residential tax rate overall in Montpelier, and unfortunately about almost a 31% tax rate increase in Roxbury.
Was it Roxbury like 40-something% before?
It was the last time we saw it.
The last time we thought, I think it was 44%.
Our original draft proposal showed almost a 60-cent increase. So this is, I think, a major win for the town of Roxbury, relatively speaking, compared to the first draft that we showed.
I think that CLA in Roxbury went up, which is good. So that.
It went up from our original thinking, yes. Last
Right.
week it was
Yeah,
higher.
you said down.
last week, or the last board meeting, we had 95.71 in there.
Okay, maybe I misremember.
So the primary difference is the long-term is the LTW ADM.
LTW ADM and the increase in the non-tax revenues.
And a little bit of cost, so it all comes together. It's plus the CLA.
The board can still consider, and I think it would be worth a discussion, but you are certainly welcome to disagree with me. The board is still adding 285,000 to the capital plan. We can not do that and not add that to our taxpayers and still achieve the goal of adding to our capital plan by using our fund balance. To add the same amount of money this year without impacting our fund balance significantly. So it might be worth a conversation considering the 30% increase at Roxbury.
Do you have a slide that is or we can go to the play around? Yeah, okay.
But I do think it's worth a conversation if we can achieve the same goal of increasing our capital plan. We need to do so we can do our capital improvements that we have planned and not have it affect the general fund or the taxpayers.
Libby, really quickly, you mentioned the only budget unknown is the contract negotiations, but we don't know what the property dollar yield will be, right? Is this
Technically, yeah,
so this is a projected
yeah,
yield?
technically,
Okay,
yes, because the yield is voted on in June-ish.
yeah,
But it's what the state's provided us to use for these discussions.
Yeah.
as of right now.
gotcha. So it's our best guess based
Correct.
on what the state is saying. And the other question I had, and then what impacts the taxpayers would be ed spending, right? Is that the line that,
Is
like,
warned on the budget?
yeah,
Yes. Ed spending per LTW ADM is on the warning,
Yes.
gotcha.
not the CLA.
No, we're not voting on a tax rate, voting on expenditure.
Yeah.
You're at 90%, you're estimating 90% of the projected revenues from special ed reimbursement,
Extraordinary, yes.
extraordinary special ed
Yep.
reimbursement,
Yep.
and now you're up to around 100.
Yeah, it was like an increase of like an extra 100 and something thousand of additional non-tax revenue that we added.
Does that give you any pause, or is that what, with other districts, are they typically estimate using the 100% of what the formula, the AOE tool projects, or is it customary to be a little bit more conservative?
Yeah, I can't speak what all other districts do. Some don't even use the model. So I would say this, I have zero hesitation of increasing it. And I say that because I think I mentioned before, they're tied together. So what we spend will come back to us in revenue once you hit the thresholds. If we don't spend, that means our costs go down and then the subsequent revenues will go down. So I have zero. Yeah, I was only being conservative first time around just because we were showing such a dramatic jump and we wanted to trust and verify. And so that's what I did. And so when the challenge came, Mike, find some opportunities, that was the first opportunity. Libby and I said, let's just do it.
And I'm going back to, I think this was last presentation, right? You went back and showed through FY 23 to now, right?
Yep.
What the state said expected was like exactly the same for the last 6 years, right?
Yeah. It was the conservative budgeting approach, I think, that my predecessor had just laid out for you guys, which was, hey, let's just keep it consistent. But the actuals were coming in much higher, again, commensurate with the actual expenses, as if I said, they're tied together.
Yeah.
So if what budget, we work very closely with Peggy Sue, and I feel comfortable that if the expenses come through, revenue will come through. And we'll, if we get more expenses, guess what? We'll get more revenue to offset it.
Right.
So I have other concerns, but that's not one of them.
But you didn't mess with the transportation aid, right? You had.
No, I didn't increase it.
Sorry, not mess.
No, I'm
Change.
when I say mess,
Yeah.
I'm just using what I would be, the information that I know of how we get reimbursed. Why would we not consider using that methodology, which gave us more revenue?
Fantastic, thank you.
I think there's also, high likelihood that the legislature uses a bunch of money to lower property tax rates. So if they use 75 million, that would be like $1 million off our ed spending. So you could plug that in at the calculator at the end.
We could definitely play with a combination of the property yield rate and to see and the 285 on the capital plan, just to get a feeling for, well, what would that impact us? We can play with it right now. You guys can see it live. If that's what you guys want to
Yeah,
do.
let's do that. I would like to see it, and then I have a follow-up question regarding using reserve fund, because we have that unknown of where contract negotiations are gonna land. We were budgeting, was it a 3% when we, no? For salary increases?
No, the 3% is what's set for administrative contracts that are multi-year contracts right now.
Right.
I prefer not to talk about what we've budgeted for our negotiations,
Yeah.
as that's part of the negotiation process.
Okay,
It kind of undermines our.
that's fine. You don't have to answer that question, but I will state the thing, if what we land on comes in higher than what we budgeted, then it would be very helpful to have plenty in our reserve to cover.
You're
Here's
spot on,
your-
Mia, but
here's your-
let's go right to that.
Here's your fund balance, and I'm sorry.
Big work little magic on there,
Oh, yeah, thank you.
so much better.
Thank you.
So our fund balance is this currently. And our policy says we need to have 2% over the FY 26 budget. We, which is there, procedurally, and we probably want to change the policy the next time it's up for monitoring, is to change it to 4%, just because that makes me feel more comfortable as a superintendent. So to keep 4% of the FY 26 budget, which would be $1.3 million. So if we were to take that 4%, our fund balance is still over $600,000 over that.
Right.
And so that amount of money would be perfectly fine to take the 285 out of it and leave plenty of money for any kind of salary increase.
So,
What would be left? Be about 300 left, a little more than.
well, that's 300 above the 4%, but in
Right.
theory, the purpose, I don't want to speak.
Go for it, you're good.
This is good, this is why
So
we
when I think of like why you have this policy, it's like a cushion to absorb variables you can't control. Contract negotiations. Negative movement in the property yield rate. I know you're saying positive, but what happens when it went the other way? Let's say
Crazy.
we lose Nick Connor and we don't get the ability to track all the kids he just helped with, right? And so that we had a negative direction of long-term weighted average ADM. A significant worse movement on the CLA. The purpose of, what I'm trying to say is the purpose of this 4% is to hedge a perfect storm. That's why it's there, to ride these waves that happen in a negative position, which would put a detrimental impact on the tax rate. At 4%, we still have 600,000. That's what Libby's trying to say. So instead of using current year funds in the budget, provide some relief and take the 285 out of the amount over the 4%.
But then, isn't it the case then that we would need to put that money back in the next budget to fill back up to 4%?
No,
No, we're $600,000 over the 4%.
I understand that, but what I'm hearing Mike say is, let's imagine we needed to spend all of that 600,000. And then there's a massive flood and we have to spend a bunch of money on repairs,
that's not.
which means we're dipping into the 4%.
True.
If we were to do that, doesn't that mean that in the future budget, we need to fill back in the hole?
No, the policy is written so that it's like nice to have a cushion, right?
Yep.
But that cushion is saying that, what the policy is saying is that the cushion should be, right now, it's 152, actually, it's 2% right now.
Yep.
Right? But that's what that cushion is for. You know, when COVID came, I didn't hesitate to buy whatever thing their teachers wanted. When the flood came, I said, get whatever we need, because we had that cushion. And if that cushion starts to decrease considerably, then Mike will come to the board and say, your cushion's decreasing considerably, let's talk about spending. He'll come to me and say that too. You still have committed funds in here that could be uncommitted. You know, there's still other motions that the board can make. I can't see that fund going down based on my 8 years of experience through 2 crises.
where I did use it pretty easily.
Well, is it the change in the accounting on special ed gonna make our fund balance not accrue?
That could have an impact. Not accrue as fast as it has. in the past.
I can't emphasize enough, you guys are in a luxury position. This is a luxury to have. I've come from districts who don't have even a fraction of this, like zero fund balance. And they struggle with decisions every year, what they can and can't do. You know, some of the discussions I heard, the wonderful humans that were up there earlier, with maybe some of the disparities are because, I'm making this up, White River's under heavy budget pressure and can't invest in extracurricular activities or in the things that they need to give the students the outcomes that they want. You guys, this is amazing. When I came here, I couldn't believe when Christina Kimball showed me the fund balance was. I'm like, yeah, I'm not used to that.
So the decisions about any changes in the fund balance, we can have those conversations in May or June.
Yep.
After the contracts have been negotiated, after the dollar yield has been set, right?
And I can run models to show
Yeah.
what impact that would have on the budget that was just voted on.
Mhm.
Is it negative, is it positive?
Yeah.
We try to be conservative and realistic in our process, which we'll divulge when the time is right, but I don't know.
This is your fund.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's money after the end of the audit, right? Like,
Yes.
so this
Yes.
is not money that from this current year budget,
No.
this is from past year's budgets.
Right.
And so that's why it's not, it doesn't need to be then replaced,
Right.
like what Mia was asking
Right.
about.
Me, I was asking more from a policy.
Yes, I was just making sure, would we be not in compliance with our policy? If our policy says we need to have 4% of whatever the upcoming fiscal year budget is in reserve, and we go below that, does that mean that we are
Yeah. I get it.
required to?
It's an aspirational policy.
Yes.
That's
It's not,
Not a
it's not,
compliance,
it's
it's not a
not,
compliance and.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's a nice to have.
So then could we see
Okay, watch your eyes.
the mess around budget?
Okay.
So you wanna start with the capital plan modification? It's gonna be about a penny and a half, if I remember correctly.
So if I take that out,
Yeah, so 131.8 to 130.5, so it's,
that brings Roxbury down from 30% to 29.
yes.
Rough.
It was 30.6 something,
Yeah.
6.4, so a little over a percent,
A percent and a half.
Percent and a half.
percent and a half, yeah.
Takes a percent and a half off.
and then.
And it's
what
about,
did
it
you
was
say,
about
Jake?
a penny point seven, so they were at 170, and now it's 168.3. I'm pretty sure it was 170.
And that's not a huge difference, and I understand that. I just think it's worth it if we can achieve that goal in a different way. I think it's worth a discussion.
I think Jake asked the same question I asked last meeting, is about the governor's proposal to add whatever it is, 77.
So you said it's about $1 million?
I think it's about $1 million. It would have about $1 million effect.
Well, we could play with the yield rate instead, I'd rather not touch the expense side.
I don't know, you're right, Mike, that
I
it
would
would
rather
make
do
the,
it that way.
that is actually how it would, it would make the yield go up,
Yeah,
but,
yes,
but I don't know what number to put in there,
well, we
but
can,
this is analogous to that.
you're right.
It has the same effect.
All right, I mean,
We're not saying we're gonna fix our budget, but. So that brings the Roxbury tax rate percentage down another 5%. And the cent to 31 cents.
That's without the
That's with the buyback
from-
and without the
Yep,
tuition.
the
yep.
transfer. to the-
so that'd be a total of like 8 cents for Roxbury, which is $80 on every $100,000 home, which is definitely helpful.
If you put the capital plan back in, but leave the million out, just what does that look like?
It's got a penny and a half, yeah.
You all knew how much time I spent on this calculator. The different dollar amounts.
Yeah.
I'll just say from my end, I think there's, for what you get out of taking the capital plan investment out of the budget, it's not worth the hole we dig ourselves in next year or the year after, when we're struggling to replace it, or, once the capital levels start dwindling with the projects that we're doing. I think
keenly aware of having to make up for past lack of investments. And I think keeping a steady and diligent investment in our facilities has been a positive thing for our district. I think our facilities bear that out, and so I would really strongly want to keep that in the budget right now, particularly given that it's only about 1.5% on the tax rate.
So then we got Scott and anybody else? Oh, and then Rhett, so Scott and then Rhett.
Yeah, I totally agree, Tim. What I understood, the suggestion was to take it out here. And then, but we have that extra 600,000 in the fund balance over the 4% target. To make the transfer from the fund balance and not put it in next year's budget. Is that what you were recommending?
And we might have that ability this year, but at a certain, if we don't maintain
Yes.
discipline with this, it's gonna catch up to us.
Absolutely.
And so that's more the principle that I think is important to me.
Yeah.
Making sure that we stay on our plan with the capital fund.
So Mike, let me go to Rhett and then you.
Well, I mean, I think if, Montpelier was looking at a 30% tax increase, Tina would be here with pitchforks. So I don't think so.
Right, right?
And it's really easy to just disregard and not really consider what's happening for this tiny 10% of the community, which is in Roxbury. But I think if it's not a huge hurt, it's meaningful to do whatever we can, because it hurts people. I'm also curious about, the CLA in over time, and maybe Jill, you could speak to this, as part of a 3-year average that, it has a lag to it that I think can be especially dramatic for small communities that don't have a really stable housing market like Roxbury, where you could have 1 or 2 sales of a really expensive homes that are up in the hills that could have this dramatic effect. 1 or 2 sales in Montpelier is not gonna have a dramatic effect. I think that's why you're suggesting, Jake, that the yield may go up, because we can expect the real estate bubble that sort of came with the pandemic and people moving away from more urban areas. We're sort of still in it, especially for a lot of rural communities. So that's another thing that I'm wondering about, is where is that bubble? Does anyone have a clue? Are we coming out of the other side yet, or is it gonna look the exact same way next year for places like Roxbury that are still in a 3-year lag? So that's another consideration, because if it's likely to be a very similar situation next year for Roxbury and other small communities that have seen these dramatic changes, maybe that $285,000 isn't as important if we're just gonna kind of see it. So I'm kind of seeing it both ways in some sense. If it's coming at us again next year and we're talking about 1.5 cents or 1.5%, or whatever you said it was, maybe I do agree with Tim. It's a really tough one. I just don't, how do we know where that bubble, that 3-year lag is a weird one, because it's just a weird bubble that's hit Vermont.
All right, so Mike and then Jim.
Okay. Look, I'm not gonna argue that a consistent approach to the capital plan is the best one. We talked about this in the operations committee. It is, but to Rick's point, I think the message I want to try to deliver is, you guys are in a unique position to be able to pivot for 1 year to provide some relief to a community that needs it. And say, hey, look, we'll dip into the excess over the 6% this year. And this year, if the dynamics are different, whether it's a yield rate, whether it's the CLA that allows us to go from, instead of doing 285, double, do 600,000 and make up for the year that we missed, you guys are in a flexible position. There are many districts that are not. And that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of follow where Mike does. I think, that giving Roxbury some relief now makes sense because we have the flexibility to do it, but I think I agree with Tim that over the long term, we need to be disciplined, and if, like, just be quite honest, if Roxbury is becoming a different housing market, this was not a, you know, a quirk of the pandemic, but Roxbury is becoming a different housing market. We're going to see, you know, these type of changes in, you know, the housing prices and estimates in Roxbury over time. Then I think that, you know, then the solution to Roxbury has to be different than us, you know, scraping away at the budget. So,
But is it not a market jump and not a,
It's-
and not a.
well, but
not a-
where's the trend going?
Yeah,
Is it a
that's-
one time
that's-
or
Is it like?
or is,
bump
or,
And then it levels off?
because
or
it
is it-
doesn't, I mean, it doesn't take too many people from like New York and Boston who have, you know, 7 figures to throw around, who are finding Waitsfield a little more expensive for their, you know, relocation home or other home, to move into Roxbury for this to happen again.
The statewide appreciation is slowing. There's like 14% the last couple of years, and now it's at 10%. And I would bet that Roxbury is not gonna go down another 20 points in CLA next year. In fact, it might even go up. Small towns tend to be volatile, because of the limited sample. I have a crazy idea that people can reject out of hand and say,
It's almost 7:35.
yeah, you don't know for eight, don't know. Crazy idea. So, you know, Roxbury's tax rate is still quite scary there, or 20, whatever we have it at, can't even see that far.
25.73.
Yeah, and somebody said that Montpelier would be out with pitchforks, which is accurate. That's huge, but Roxbury's a tiny town. And what if the school district made a payment to the town? Like to offset some property taxes, it would cost very little. Cause it's such a small town with such a small grand list. And that's a direct way of addressing Roxbury's tax rate increase rather than messing with the budget.
You mean through the fund balance?
Yeah.
I'd be curious what the numbers are. That's actually, I like you're kind of crazy, man.
Are we allowed?
Could figure it out, but you know, it's not gonna be a lot of money.
I mean, we've got the people on our board who can tell us whether we can do that or not. I have no idea if we can do that or not, but I would call Jake Feldman.
Tim's a lawyer.
Yeah, get lawyers.
Good lawyer.
How many households are there?
Well, so that
Let's
rate
figure
increase
that
on
out.
those numbers and.
Yeah.
We figured that out earlier today.
We can tell you,
We have it.
210?
we can tell you the breakouts of the demographics within the household of.
I mean, we could give
Roxbury
every
residents.
house in Roxbury for that about a $1,500.
For how much money?
It's gotta be, I just updated.
285.
285.
We just looked at it
I think
earlier.
it's, maybe it's before the pandemic.
The $1,500.
Yeah, yeah, keep going.
If it's something where you could maintain. fund-
Here we go.
Use the,
Right here.
use the fund balance to offset.
So that's it, let's see.
That would be a lot.
It's 110, 152.
I don't
So
know.
about 225.
Wow.
That's residents
The,
or
sorry,
households.
it should be household.
Household, I think,
It should
okay.
be household, I mean residential households that fall into that category of, you know, residential homes that rate that we're all
Got it.
talking about.
So it looks like 129 plus 110 or so. I can't really
Like
see that
225 in total, I think.
far. Okay, so if.
I'm just rounding for simplicity.
Yeah, so $1,000 each would be $225,000.
Well, I think if you would go, you're gonna go that path, you'd go the, a payment based on the proportional share of the value of the grand list, right? Because a grand list of 200,000 home.
But this is just like scale of reference to talk, to
Right.
see if it's something that's
Right.
reasonable, and if it's that. From the, I mean, that doesn't seem crazy.
But in theory, isn't the same impact on the tax rate would have the same impact? Like, meaning any reduction that we do on behalf of the Roxbury residents, that's kind of the same thing, isn't it?
Same as what?
As the proposal that you're providing. So, which is instead of a cash payment, which would allow the budget to stand still at where it is. And keep the 285 in this example,
Right.
in the spend.
Well, Montpelier's rate has gone negative. On the calculator. And so, yes, but do you want to be working with your money to lower Montpelier and Roxbury's
Yeah.
rate? When really Roxbury's rate is the problem? Do you want to target?
Yeah, because
I got you now.
if you cut from the budget.
You affect both communities.
And most of the benefit goes to Montpelier.
Yep.
Because it's so much larger than so many more households, but if you just take a small chunk and target that disproportionately hit population, you can make a much bigger difference in Roxbury.
I see it now. I'm a little slow, so thank you for I got it.
I
Say that I'm
like
having
it.
heart
I like it.
palpitations from this conversation, like it's making you a little sweaty. I have a heart, I feel like I need to like defibrillate or something, like, cause I think in precedents, right? So is the board willing to set a precedent that when a town doesn't like the tax rate because of something out of the board's control, the board will use their fund balance to pay them? That is a precedent that I am not comfortable supporting the
Well,
board in making.
I mean, but I think the flip side to that is, do we want a precedent when it's out of, when there's something out of control? Has a huge tax increase, we cut the budget in unwise ways. I think we're just dealing with a unique situation, and a unique solution, it might make sense.
I like the idea in theory, but I don't think we legally are able, like, I definitely do not think we are able to decide to give, like, we're a district, we have a district budget. I don't think we're allowed to take money from our budget and allocate it to one specific town. Like, I don't think that that's how
I'm
the
not
ed
allowed
fund
to give
works.
a gift card for mileage to a family who needs it. Like, I can't see how I would be able to do that. Like, that just doesn't work. I'm not allowed to give families in need money directly. Like, I can't do that, because why would I be able to do that?
Yeah, I would rather focus our discussions on the district's budget and ways to reduce the overall budget than cherry pick communities that are impacted by factors that we don't have any control. I guess it was just so less articulate.
I don't know, I mean, I feel like the budget, if you look at the budget, it's a responsible budget, it's bringing in a decrease. And then it goes over to the state and they say, what that means is a 25% increase for one town. So when you're kind of faced with that scenario, I mean, cutting further from a responsible budget, it doesn't seem, it seems like trying to address that bizarre outcome might be the better move. And I totally take your point, Jill, but I think that's, we have a lawyer, I think, I'm sure he could figure it out if this is a permissible thing.
And you could pay the town instead of the people.
Well, and frankly, have we closed on the building?
No.
I mean, we're negotiating a
Just what
purchase
you
and
wanna
sale of a building.
Pay them to take the bill.
There are any number of ways to structure it.
I think some version of this happens every year for school districts, I'm sure, and where I'm from, Caledonia County, like, I have no doubt that the different tax rate impacts can be pretty severe on different towns, so. I don't think this, I'm very sympathetic, and I think it's terrible that we have a very responsible budget that really is like basically level funded or below that, and that residents in one of our towns, of our two towns, is seeing, like, I wish there was a different way, but I just don't think there's a mechanism for that, and I don't think we're unique for being in this situation, so barring some magical way to change how we pay into the ed fund and the districts pass money to AOE, I just don't think it's like literally possible. I don't think we're allowed. I think it's a great idea, but I don't think we're allowed.
What if it is not illegal? Which means
It's legal.
But it's not, it's all- and what if the price tag was $60,000 to make it, you know?
There would be Montpelier residents, I think, who would be pretty angry and say, well, next time Montpelier's rate goes up, we expect the school board to do the same thing. I'm just playing devil's advocate, but I think
If
that's.
Montpelier rate was going up, we would be monkeying with budget, to be honest.
Right.
We wouldn't have.
But since Roxbury is a small town 30 minutes away, you know, we're more reluctant to. And since there's fewer households.
Well, AI says we can't.
Okay, no.
I think let's talk to the kids who were talking about differentiating between.
That's right. That's right. Local municipal tax burden, says Jim's computer. I'm not talking about the municipal tax burden, I wrote the educational tax burden.
I also just quickly, and then I'll stop interrupting. I also do think like the point is really heartbreaking that we went through all the process of literally closing the school in Roxbury and then they're still experiencing this tax rate increase. That feels particularly like problematic as far as how our formula goes. Like it basically made a difference in our budget for 1 year for all that. And now we're back here again and their tax rate is going up that. That's really crummy. Just my unhelpful comment. And I would like to do what we could to reduce it, even if it is 1.5. So I'm for filling the capital plan coffer from the fund balance rather than adding it to this spending this year.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to send money to the town. I really appreciate the suggestion and the thought exercise, and I'm really curious about what is possible with a fund balance when things are weird, right? Because you're not only looking at, you know, you're also looking at different people that are paying different percentages based on their income. And so that's also a factor. And like, is there a sweet spot there, right? Like the somewhere between whatever it is, 60,000 and 115,000, is that the sort of group of folks that's gonna hurt the most? And I'm curious just what is possible, and I wonder if we can ask Pietro or if we can get some answers, because there may be a time when, you know, whatever, there's hurts, and somehow I wonder if there are little ways the general fund can be used to help certain segments of both communities that would be most dramatically hurt.
You mean that was sort of.
Yeah. Like, I'm just curious what's legal, what's possible. I think that's a reasonable question coming out of this conversation. I really appreciate it. I think it's really hard to do something that's completely unfair to two different communities, but I wonder about the possibility of potentially using some form of general fund to sort of target certain sections, certain income levels at certain points in the future that are gonna be really more dramatically hurt than your families that are making over 100, you know, I don't know, families making over 100. It hurts everyone, but if you're making a lot more, it might hurt a little less than the person that's kind of chugging along at $80,000 as a household income. That's, so I'm curious about that possibility and whether Libby would be potentially just put those questions to Pietro and wonder if, for in the future, is there a way to use general fund to help certain segments of the community that are maybe most dramatically hurt, especially when you're talking about a hard hit to
You mean the fund balance?
the fund balance.
Yeah, do you mean in the way Jake was talking about? Like.
Yes, well, sort of, yeah, I'm just wondering what's legal, you know, what is possible? I think that's a reasonable question.
Well, the state level, you know, Governor Scott, for example, could increase the property yield rate, and that would empty some of the general, the ed fund reserves, if you will, like that $75 million idea. That's one way, that's at a state level, right? At the local level, all I can think of is the unrestricted surplus that we have access to. And maybe Red's right, the question to Pietro could be one that says, outside of those two things, what else is at our disposal? Because you have state level macro impact that impacts everyone. And then you obviously have the unrestricted surplus, and then maybe there's something. You know, you mentioned the income sensitive piece, it would take. The legislature would have to make a decision on that income limit, it used to be as high as 136. But I think it was Jake that explained, which I know he stepped out, I wish he was back here. He explained that the rising costs or the rising inflation of the housing market is not keeping up with income. So like 7 years ago, the income threshold was 136 to be income sensitive. If I'm making sense?
No, I think that's.
Do you know what I'm going with this? And maybe I should stop talking and let you
No,
finish,
go
but it went from 136, now it's as low as 115. Okay, so people are hitting that income sensitive threshold, or I should exceeding it, and having to pay the homestead rate instead of an income sensitive rate because of that dynamic. So you asked a great question about the reals. I have no idea if this thing's ever gonna end. Right? And so that could put even more pressure on that income level.
Okay, so the question that we have on the table as far as what's within our control as a board right now is the contribution to the capital plan. And we can put that back in, okay. That's where we stand right now. And we heard Tim advocate for leaving it in, Jill saying she's okay taking it out. I can't remember where Jim landed. I think it would be helpful to go around the room from board members to hear, so that we can give that direction to the administration for coming back to us with the final budget next meeting. Because I think that's the only question on the table that we actually can do anything about right now, as far as the discussion so far tonight.
Well, I generally agree with Tim. I think in this case, we just. For this year, for this budget cycle, we zero out the contribution to the capital plan. From the budget, and at the same time, make the contribution from the fund balance. If we can make that contribution at any time, right, we could do it, we could vote as a board right now to make that contribution, or we could wait till May or June. I'm not as passionate about when to make it, but I do think.
Or you could make it at the next meeting when it's appropriately warned.
But
as a-
even better. Parliamentarian.
Scott, are you saying all of it or 15,000?
So, wait, what is it, 286 or
285.
285? So zero that out, and then we're 600 and whatever, that 100 over the 4% limit. Right, so we could in the reserve fund, so we could take that 285 out of the reserve fund and still be, over 300,000 over our 4%. Limit that we imposed also on ourselves.
That's over here, Sam, Nora.
Clear as mud, right?
John's file.
Jake, Jim,
Did we look at the effect of taking the whole 285 out?
yes, if he's,
Let's do it again.
yeah, let's do it again.
Opinion I have. 1.7, Roxbury.
I don't know, I think it's fine. We take it out, call it out.
Yeah, I think it is too, just with the notion that this is a one-time fix to help the community that got hit hard. But these trends, which are not in our control, continue to pose problems, that this is not a long-term solution. Go back to Tim's point of making sure we take care of the fund balance and our ability to keep up some strength and shape.
Did you wanna say more of that? What about you, Casey?
I'm very much in the touring camp of, I agree with Tim, and I think I was one who advocated for increasing at some other operations, but that was right on time. And I do like the consistency, and I feel like taking it out isn't
make all that much of a difference on the impact on the people ultimately that are paying this. I would prefer to go into Roxbury saying, we took it out, having that conversation, that we did try the best we could, and that we have a plan to still keep up our capital projects and do the work that we need to do, because we do have that plan. And so I guess I'm inclined to take it out. It'd be nice if we had in writing a long-term plan on how we're gonna keep the capital fund running into the future.
Well, I was just saying, it's the lone voice of dissent on this. I think we're in,
I thought you were gonna call yourself the lone voice of reason.
no. But I think we're in year 18, this is at the state level, we're in year 18 of our 30-year plan to pay down our pension unfunded liabilities because of decisions like this in the past. And so while one time, we say it now, I do worry that it may not be one time, and that when we're back here next year with probably a more difficult situation, that we're gonna not have the will to increase it. And so I would much rather explore targeting what I think is the problem, which is the percent increase on Roxbury, than from the shave of $1.50, but I'll defer to the will of the board.
Lynn, would you like to chime in?
Yes. Oops, sorry.
Oh, I think you're logged in twice. That might be the problem.
Oh, yeah. Okay, hang on.
Yeah, hold on, I think I can fix this.
I think she sounds okay.
Like down her end. Try again, Lynn.
Can you hear us? That might have been how she was
That might have been her.
listening. But she should still be able to hear us. You just made her not a panelist. Maybe
Right.
she can hear it. Lynn, can you hear us now?
I think her speaker was on one and her microphone was on the other, and
Yeah,
so
but she just made her not a panelist, so she.
her speaker was logged out.
Yeah, she just logged off.
So her mic is logged in, but her speaker just logged out.
Okay, am I good now?
Yes.
Enough, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not ready to make a decision tonight. I mean, I would like to help Roxbury out, but I think I'd like to see the numbers specifically on paper for the different options.
Which different options are you talking about, Lynn?
Sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, okay. I don't know if that's. Is this better?
A little bit.
Okay. When you say different options, what are the different options you're referring to?
Well, if we take it out of the fund balance this year, or and then what that, I think we need to know whether it's legal to do that, and we also need to know whether we're setting a precedence for this happening in the future. I think we have to figure out how to make the the tax rates more equitable somehow, but I don't know that this is necessarily the immediate solution I would think of.
Are you thinking about the idea of paying Roxbury from the fund balance? Because that's not the question right now.
I'm sorry. I'm having a really hard time hearing you.
Okay, I don't know what to do.
Say it again.
I think you're referring to that idea that Jake was talking about regarding paying the town of Roxbury to buy down.
Yes.
Okay, that wasn't the question. We're not considering that tonight anymore.
Okay, I thought that's what we were just closing out.
No, the thing we're closing out is whether or not to maintain the contribution to the capital plan of $285,000 in the regular budget.
Okay,
Or that this year and use reserve funds for a contribution to the capital plan.
yeah, I think we should continue to do that.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Lynn. Sorry about the audio difficulties.
Yeah, it's not good tonight for some reason.
Any other discussion on the budget? It's 8 o'clock, so we've hit the limit for crazy ideas. Sorry, Jake. No more. Legislators up for some. Okay, all right.
One thing, it's so it's a co-curriculars question and the expenditures are pretty much the same for 27 as 26. And our hopes of our co-curricular offerings are still the same as they were last year, is that right?
Yeah.
Kind of, that makes sense?
Yes.
Level programming.
Yeah,
I
okay.
mean, plus.
I think you're asking, just to put a finer point on it, is Bridges going to continue?
Yeah, I
As
mean.
as an MRPS?
Well, when Roxbury does take ownership of the building and if everyone can figure out how to work really well together and communicate fabulously and
It's
amazingly
budgeted.
and cooperate, it's budgeted, that's all.
Yes.
Just thank you, I appreciate it.
Yep.
And I just want to be clear in your comment, expenses are going up, and we did discuss what's driving it, but what helped offset these expenditures like compensation and benefits and outside services is the non-tax revenue that we're able to bring in to help lower the impact. So expenses aren't the same year over year, but level programming is, we're not changing what we're offering. If that makes sense.
Okay, I'm gonna move us to public comment, because I don't want to forget that. If there are folks in the room who would like to comment on the budget, or, I mean, I suppose you could comment on whatever you'd like. I see we have someone in the room who'd like to make a comment. Please come forward, introduce yourself, and make sure the mic can pick you up.
Hi, Tina Muncy. And believe it or not, instead of talking to you today, I'd like to talk to my representatives today to say that you've watched how hard it is to produce a budget. I'm really pleased with my board and my superintendent for how hard they've worked in the last few years to maintain the program we have in Montpelier and trying to keep it so the people of my age can continue to live and afford to live in Montpelier, right? And there was a committee set to established to propose to you various maps with bigger districts. And actually, I went one day and sat all day and listened to the committee work. And they had some very good maps worked out already. But they didn't have the political will at the end to carry through with what they were asked to do. And I listened to the governor today, and I happen to agree with him. And here's what I'm asking you. I want you to have the courage, and it's going to take courage, to have a system that our great teachers can teach our children well, and I can still afford to live in Vermont. So I'm counting on you. Please do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tina. Is there anyone online who would like to make a comment? Just use that raised hand function at the bottom of your screen. Okay, Okay, well then we'll move from that public comment period to welcoming officially our state legislators. Thank you so much for joining us. This has become somewhat of a tradition as you get started with your very busy days as legislators for you to join us for a school board meeting. And we really appreciate not only the service that you provide in the State House, just a few blocks away, but also you making the time this evening to be here, even though it's after 8 o'clock already. So thank you very much. The purpose of this is for us to have a dialogue around what the priorities are for the legislature this year that will have an impact. And I understand there might be a few. We can handle this as just a simple question answer, or if there's thoughts that any of you would like to share with us to open up, we would certainly welcome that.
Yeah, so thanks very much for, I mean, go ahead, my gosh, interrupted senators.
Yeah,
So, well, thanks very much for having us. Obviously, education will be the centerpiece of this legislative session. And, you know, I'm very lucky that I serve as the former teacher of the year here because I'm not an expert in education policy. I think politics is mostly what we should be talking about today. Because, you know, I think we could go into the weeds as much as we want here. It's like writing a letter to yourself almost. I imagine a lot of people heard the governor's speech today. It was a speech, it was a threat too, right? It was a threat. Senator Perchlik's got an appropriations budget, and the governor said pretty explicitly, I will not pass any budget unless you follow through with the plans of Act 73 here and start carving up some districts, right? You know, there's a tremendous amount of pressure in the building. If you've been there, you feel it. We got our clocks cleaned last election, right? Democrats got our clocks cleaned. We lost veto-proof majority. I think we did that because people felt their taxes were too high, not necessarily because we wanted to dismantle the education system or have it look like something that we can't support or get behind. I'm always skeptical, you know, when the governor says it, or anybody says it, I think members of my own caucus do, that we're gonna save a lot of money and we're gonna get better student outcomes. I just bought like a Kia at a used car dealership and they said it'd be pretty good going up hills, you know, but hey, I got a good price. It's struggling, I tell you. So like, you don't need to be Nostradamus to know how this is gonna end, right? It's gonna end the last few weeks of the session. And we're all gonna have to elbow our way to the table to see what we want the future of the education system to look like. Because I know we have to make hard decisions, but I can't recall any school board member, I can't recall any member of the administration or any teacher who emailed me this last session and said, you know what, vote for 73, that looks like the way we should be going here. Yes, my caucus, they did too in the House here. Actually, I feel like took some courage here. We were under pressure to come behind Act 73. It did not feel like our community was ready to get behind this. So, like, again, we could get in the weeds a little bit, but I think we got to really kind of think big picture. What do you want the future to look like? Do you want to be here in a couple of years, right? Or do you want a mega board making the decisions that we send a couple of representatives to? Maybe we don't even vote on school budgets anymore, right? We don't vote on the state budget, and if we have big enough districts, that could be taking some power away from the people there. We're gonna lay off teachers, probably. We're probably gonna lay off a lot of administrators. And I think 10 years from now, you know, we can be honest and say, if you look at all the high schools in Central Vermont, all the schools, few of them are not gonna exist anymore. So it's define or be defined time, right? And we collectively just have to stay in touch, close touch over this session and see what we want to do. And you gotta lean on your associations, Superintendent's Association, School Board Association, NEA, Principals Association. They're gonna be in the rooms making this decision. But we gotta play hard on this because this is the future. That's a pretty big soapbox. I'm sorry.
I always hate going after Representative Casey because he's so good. So I would add that I think that there's not one silver bullet to this. I think so. I also voted no on 73, and
And I want to keep the focus on making sure that we are addressing what we were tasked to do, which was reduce property taxes. And I I haven't seen great data to suggest that massive districts or closing schools necessarily does that. And so, but I think that there are still things that we can do. And so the pro tem did come out with a suggestion to cap spending. And I think he's also been pretty clear that that is just one suggestion. It doesn't have to be the only suggestion. It doesn't, that he's open to, forgive me if I'm, or correct me if I'm misspeaking here, but it seemed to me that he was open to being wrong about that, but that he also mentioned that all the options are on the table, and I think that that is really true. And one of the things that I think that we really need to get after is what the drivers are of school budgets, right? Like, as you were talking this evening, that like there are very few things that you have control over, and if there's a cap, for example, that means cutting teachers, like that's, and programs, like that's what that would boil down to. But if there's a way that we can address the major drivers, healthcare, if there's a way that we can address the CLA, that, I mean, maybe that's, might not be a this year thing, but just to say, like, if we can look at the major drivers and address those, that is where my preference would be. Even just with your discussion tonight, which was super interesting, I would, I was chatting with Senator Pershlik a little bit about, I don't know if you are to, give money, let's say, to Roxbury voters, but it made me wonder about, if we are applying any kind of buy down, if that buy down gets distributed evenly, and if there's a way to target a buy down to communities that are experiencing a much higher percentage increase, for example. So I think going to things like this is always helpful because it gives me ideas about what potential solutions could be. And, even I've said a few things like, okay, can we look at, costs of, like, let's say, healthcare for teachers, that kind of thing. If there's other ideas, I certainly want to hear them. And I guess I would also add that, there's the spending side of it, and then there's the who's paying and how they're paying as well. And just to put it out there, it's not been introduced yet, but I will have a bill that will. So right now, fuel is not subject. Fuel oil, I should say, is not subject to sales tax for residences. It is subject to sales tax for businesses. And so one possibility to help increase the ed fund, because sales tax does go to the ed fund, is to unexempt second homes and or Airbnbs from that exemption. So again, don't want as much as we can hold the property tax rate down for the average Vermonter. I want to do that. But if there's other places where we can find a little bit of money, I'm open to that.
Hello, again, thanks for having us. I think it's important that we do this, and thank you for being on board, all of you. And I know what kind of time commitment that it is. And so I appreciate that you're doing it. You have other things and family that you could be with. What I'd add to what Representative Casey and Senator Watson said is one of the things that I would like us to do is, and we heard a little bit about the income sensitivity, and hasn't been changed in a while. And if we're really trying to provide property tax relief for those where the property taxes are hurting the most, changing that system would be beneficial, and moving to where more of Vermonters are paying based on their income, because those numbers have been adjusted. There's things like that'll happen, but as we heard from the governor today, he's at least signaling he's not interested in those kind of conversations, that he's said Act 173 as we passed it last year. I'm hopeful that if we can meet the goals that the governor has, that we share, like when we passed 73, even though so many of us didn't vote for it, we were supportive of the effort, because we supported the same goals that the governor has, is quality education but controlled spending. which would result in lower property taxes. I'm still supportive of that. I'm trying to have it kind of both ways, and I think it's the best way in that we can have a foundation formula. And if I had to make a prediction, I would say we're gonna end up with a foundation formula. But how can we do that, but still have some local control over the districts? And I think a foundation formula that is set would force localities to rearrange their districts on their own. And I think, as you guys have felt, you've dealt with Roxbury, local people can make these decisions, and I think they're the best people to make the decisions. But we're gonna have to force the decisions with a foundation formula, I think. And I think that's the kind of maybe middle of the road where we can get the governor's support to sign something. Otherwise, we will never leave. We do not want to get in a situation where we're in a death match with the governor, where he won't sign the budget, we won't give him a budget until we can agree on this, and we're there till August. I think there will have to be a negotiation on this issue. And I think something like that, like we will have a foundation formula, so we're controlling spending from the state perspective, but that that Montpelier isn't forcing districts, forcing school closing and forcing districts based on what we think is right, but we're giving that power, local control to localities to make that decision best for their communities and for their children. So that's all I have to say for now.
Okay. I will have two big focus this year. The first one will be education. My committee is responsible for the education fund and setting the tax rates. I'm also on health and welfare, and finance is also responsible for health insurance. And we are a very expensive state. We are one of the most expensive states. We have one of the most expensive hospitals in the country. Last year, we made several big steps into curbing that, but it will take time. We also have one insurance company essentially in this state, and they, in our efforts to keep their rates down, we ended up coming close to putting them under. So we're trying to keep everybody afloat there. Obviously, health insurance and pays a major role in school costs. I serve on the commission on the future of public education. We have sent in our final report, and I think about the only thing we agreed on was that salary and benefit should be negotiated, that having health insurance, which is the benefit, negotiated out there somewhere, really cut the power of school, personnel, school boards to negotiate. We couldn't agree on what level that should all happen, statewide or local, but it is recognized as a problem. I think I agreed with everything the governor said today about, and I don't think we see it in Montpelier or even in Washington County so much, because we are relatively a large and well-to-do county, and we're relatively sanely organized. But I have a daughter who serves on a school board that is not so well endowed financially, and we have children who are not getting what they need to be functioning adults in today's world. Our graduation rate, high school graduation rate, is dropping. We used to be the best in New England. We're now the worst. According to the governor, our tests are going down, but I'm not sure which test anybody's talking about. Depending on who you listen to, you get different stories. And I have a feeling you get different stories in different schools. We need to make sure that every child in Vermont has access to excellent education. And I would say my 4 kids went through this school. They got an excellent education. Every kid deserves to get that. I heard the word, it hurts people. I think we've reached the point where everybody is hurting. Students are hurting, School boards are being forced to make decisions they know are not wise educationally in order to get their budgets passed. But the people that built our community, that were the volunteer firefighters and the school board members and the teachers, can't afford to pay their property taxes. They can't, even with the income sensitivity payments. The V's, as they're fondly known as, but the superintendents, the principals, the school boards will all be heard from. They've already been lining up in my committee. Who isn't organized and who won't be heard from in an organized fashion are your taxpayers. A good portion of Vermont, we're pushing 50%, are coming in to either being retired or getting close to retirement, where they're starting to look at their savings and trying to calculate, can they continue to live here? So I don't think that doing nothing is an option. I was very disappointed that the governor decided to sound like the federal government and take a hard line and say, it's my way or the highway. Because I think all the groups that have been working over the summer have done their best and have come in with their best recommendations. We may not like them, but they are what they are. I think we will, the one thing I haven't seen is hard numbers. I have not seen a hard number from anybody. I saw very few hard numbers last year. The Department of Education was literally writing Act 73 as they were presenting it to the committee. They had a group of consultants and they were knocking it out. Even when we spend more time and have better numbers, we have to go back and adjust. And we will have to adjust as demographics and situations in Washington and who knows what else. This isn't something that's static, the education system. I'm going to need to see numbers. I'm not sure the districts, it'll save some superintendent salaries. It's going to be a drop in the bucket compared to the overall cost. We will get healthcare under some kind of control, but the cost of healthcare in this country is the highest in the world. It is not the best. And Vermont has limits as to what it can do. Rural hospitals throughout this country are in danger of closing. And other than, I think, the UVM network and maybe one or two others, every one of our rural hospitals' finances are in shades of red or pink. And new changes in Medicaid could put them under. So that's crisis number 2 I'm looking forward to this year. I think we need to be able to work a solution ourselves. I think the pro tem is right. Funding education is just sucking money out of the general fund at this point, the money we have to fund everything else. So we can't fund our mental health systems, which the schools need to help cut their, we've just got this cycle going. We can't fund homelessness. We can't fund hunger. We can't, and in the end, schools end up dealing with all of this. So we're going to have to work together. I don't know that closing bigger districts, maybe bigger, but not 5, would work. But I also know that we cannot afford to pay a teacher a living wage to teach a class of 4, 5, or 6 kids. And in some schools, that's what we're doing. We need to pay our teachers well. We need more teachers. We are laying off teachers now. We are making cuts we shouldn't be making now. So hope that we can do what Vermont does best, which is sit down and talk and work together. Once we get into well, if the rich just paid their fair share, we'd all be fine. If I took all the rich, the 1,000 millionaires I've got, if I took all their money, I could not cover the healthcare and education costs. I mean, we don't have that many rich people. I fully believe we will do a second homes tax. It will take a good 2 years, and your listers will not be happy, to get it into place. The goal is that will cover the cost of income sensitivity. I want to look closely at that income sensitivity. Because we've been distracted, no, we haven't raised the house values. And that's hurting people who are living in the family home that they paid $35,000 for, and it's now worth $400,000, but they're still living on the $35,000 salary. And I've got at least one gold town that is really hurting retirees in. I want to make sure that we aren't forcing people out of their homes because we don't have an alternative for them to go to at this point. So that's it. I don't know what the solution is. It is beyond my pay grade. All I know is I have an interesting and diverse committee. I am working with both the House Ways and Means and the Senate Education Committee to see if we can put something together, if we can put together a bill that the governor might see the light. And I'm not sure exactly what he means. I'm going to need to see hard numbers on districts if that's what he's going to insist on. I need to know that going to 5 districts is going to save us multi-millions of dollars, and I don't believe it is. So I think that's where we are. None of us know where we're going to end up. We know you're struggling to budget. I know Andrew's going to be struggling to budget. And I know come June, when people get put out of the motels and on the streets, we're all gonna get beaten up again this year because we don't.
April.
And April's not, yeah, it's April, that's right. April's not, and it can get real cold in April, so, this is crisis time. Vermont is not alone, but we're just gonna have to hang in there. Wish I had a simple solution.
We do too.
I don't.
Well, thank you again for being here. Do we have questions, board members?
Answers.
It's okay if you don't have answers to our questions today. Some of them are prompting questions for as you start your work off.
Somebody had answers.
I mean, just speaking from the perspective of Roxbury and sort of the circumstances of closing the small school. I think I said this last year, it's really hard to lean on local communities to close small schools when those are such essential parts of the fabric of the community. So it's not the right idea to say that the local community should make that decision. Unless that you can find a way to incentivize that decision. Number one, help that incentive transform that space into something meaningful for that community, which hopefully can still mean savings. Certainly savings when you're having a teacher teach, 5 first and second graders. But you also got to think about transporting kids, right? Because where are they going? How far do they have to go? And I don't know what the answer is there, but we have in Roxbury, a lot of folks get on the bus right at the Roxbury Village School. It's basically 25 minutes. It's not that bad. If you can't get to the school, it's significantly longer. But we've done our best to have buses on the east side of town and the village side of town. And that's a big deal, is distances. Another part of that is, like, we need a bus monitor, you know, when you're talking about kids that are 6 years old and kids that are 17 years old on the same bus. There's some risk there, and it makes a big difference. I don't know how those are necessarily answers, but it does seem like there are a lot of small schools that do need to close. If you rely on local communities to do it, that's not gonna happen. I don't know where the money comes to incentivize those communities. I don't know where that money comes from, but it would be a lot more palatable if there was some help and an idea of, you know, this used to be a thriving school and now maybe it can be a thriving community center. And in some ways, that could be a better benefit to small communities than a tiny school where you're paying a whole lot of money and you're actually not giving as much educational sort of experience to those kids, even though they're close to home.
I think you're right.
I
Thank
think
you.
you're right. I
And-
think that we need to come up with money to help towns
Transition.
do that kind of conversion. You could do a senior activity center there and give your elders that live alone out in the woods. You could do home health, could do a wellness clinic.
Use that kitchen
Yeah,
for meals.
use the kitchen for meals, do an after school program, so your kids aren't here. But small towns don't have it, and I think we've heard. I mean, Roxbury's 25 minutes from Montpelier. You get up into the kingdom and there isn't anybody. And there aren't any paved roads. And we have one school, not out in the rural area. We have schools, and I've gotten in trouble for saying, but the people in wealthier communities would not send their dogs to. We have at least one school that has sewage backing up into the cafeteria. We have others where the swamp next door is bleeding in to the basement. We need to, I don't know a school that doesn't have a leaky roof, maybe this one.
We fix it. We fix it.
You think it's a fun Nobody can pass a bond to do what is just general maintenance. And we need to find a way to do that.
Yeah.
It's.
Jimmy,
where
what,
do
did you have a, and then Scott?
I kind of wanted the things of what you write. I mean, I have huge reservations about the idea of let's pass a funding mechanism and hope that districts work it out, because one, I'm not sure they will. And two, I think to the extent they do, it will be in a very painful way. With a lot of finger pointing, a lot of, I mean, just what happened to Roxbury, what's going on in Wash Central right now with Donny and Callis. I think if we're going to close schools and consolidate, I think it needs to be done in a way that's thoughtful, that where, like, honestly, some of the issues are forced, but also where there is plans to invest in towns to make sure that, you know, communities are left whole, that we have schools in places that we enlarge them or build new schools to, you know, to service it, that we just don't, you know, we don't either, you know, pass a funding mechanism and say, okay, towns figure it out, or we just do kind of a radical cut up of the state and say, here are the districts now, but we're not going to give you money to invest in. The other thing I didn't hear mention, which I think is tied to the problem, obviously healthcare is a huge cost, housing. We need more housing, we need to build more housing, we need to bring more families in. We need to bring more affordable housing. We need to increase our tax rate. It is so hard to build in Vermont. And I'm an environmentalist. I do not want stupid growth, but even in places where it makes a ton of sense, the lots just sit vacant forever, and plans come up and people throw sand in the gears and the financing doesn't work. And it's not sustainable. We need to add more housing, we need to add more kids, and we need to add more tax base. And that is something the legislature needs to focus on.
I totally agree on the housing and all those other things. And the reason I think that a foundation formula and then having the locals not close the schools, but create the districts. The districts are gonna close the schools anyway, so if schools are gonna be closed, it's gonna be a local decision. The state is never gonna choose what schools to be closed, because it's too painful, as you know, for the legislators to choose it, and we get a lot of pushback if we say Montpelier is gonna decide what's best for your local community. It's hard, but the local communities, I think, are best situated to make those decisions of where the districts, because they know about the busing. They know the area so much better than legislators would know. So I think if there's decisions to be made, then they're gonna have to be made. They're gonna be forced upon them. And it's not what I would choose. I'm just saying, given the governor's situation, given we don't have a veto-proof majority, and the governor is very clear on his position, that's the kind of that's kind of where I think where we could meet in the middle. It's not what I would choose if I was just designing it on my own.
So we have,
Just a quick follow-up. I mean, I think you can come
Scott
to
and then
sort
me.
of a middle ground where you don't necessarily make the very local choices, but you kind of, you know, you do force some of the districts, because I think district merging is really hard. So force some of the districts. And then, create incentives that, make it very hard for them not to close schools. I mean, they can choose which schools to close and which schools not to close, but, have backup plans where, if the district does that thoughtfully, they benefit. And if they don't do that, then it's really painful.
It'll get messy, right? Because we all over there believe in merging districts and closing schools, just not ours, right? It's, so all the victims will come to light,
I mean, none of this is painless, but but
If I can-
it needs some. It needs some nudging that takes a little political pain.
Yep. If I can also just add, I want to thank you for bringing up housing, absolutely a part of the factor as well. And as the chair of Senate Natural Resources and Energy, this is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. And we do have bills that we're going to work on this session that pertain to housing that should make it easier and cheaper to build. But we'll see how those conversations go. But it is something on my radar that we need to work on. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, and I guess I would also add, I just want to appreciate the sentiment that because I share this, I don't think that we need to slash environmental protections in order to build wisely. Right? Like these things are not antithetical to each other. And I think it's actually better if we can build in a way that is environmentally sound. That's going to be more sustainable housing anyway. Okay, thanks. Go for it, Scott.
Yeah, I had two questions, one quick one, maybe long, and a comment, and maybe I won't ask them all because it's getting late. First quick question, I'm really happy to hear that, I guess maybe not this year, right, for the caps that the pro tem is proposing, but maybe next year or that's good, I guess. That it's not this year. I haven't heard anything about the amounts. Has there been any discussion about what, like, is the cap gonna be no more than 10% or no more than 0.10%? Like,
I've heard a bunch of different numbers on that. I don't know if you haven't seen the bill. Yeah, he's just made the public announcement.
Yeah, the bill will land in my committee tomorrow. I've heard 2% thrown around, but I don't know what's in the bill. And it's been very clear that he has no pride of authorship on that.
So I'm wondering where CTE is in the conversation. That seems to have gotten lost in yeah, I don't know. It seems to have gotten lost. And then the question I had was, I think I heard you say, Senator Perch, like if we went to a foundation formula that would incentivize mergers or force I'm curious.
It depends on what the dollar amount is of the foundation formula, but the foundation formula that we're talking about, is at a level that would be difficult to operate districts and schools without the dollar amount. So some schools would have to merge to make it work.
So the premise being that merging would save money.
Well, it would change their budgeting situation and how they raise money for their tax base. More than save money.
Can you say more about that? I don't understand what you're saying.
Right.
The 48 other states use a foundation.
Right.
And they go to court regularly saying it's not adequate. The number and the ed committee that set this up was using Professor Colby from UVM, and she's one of the experts in the country,
Just one of our parents.
on school funding.
They all.
And we're taking the number, I'm not sure, there are other experts and I will hear from them. But, the goal is if we pick the right number, and that's what somehow nationally is derived as what you need to provide an excellent education. Our old foundation formula used to say adequate. Adequate 1950 something, when we did it, was you could read and write. If we pick the right number and we say, okay, this is what it takes to educate a kid. And that's, your weights are on top of that, your special ed, transportation. All right, if we do that correctly. Right now, if I have a school and I have 4 kids in every grade, and I don't want to close my school, I vote to spend $30,000 a student to keep my school open. And that cost is appropriated to the ed fund. So you are exporting the cost of your decision to keep that school open. The theory is that if you had to live on an adequate budget, that you would then need or see the efficacy of perhaps merging your 4-student group with another group. That's the theory. If schools would actually do that, I don't know. But the theory is that if you had to live in that dollar amount, that then you couldn't choose to have how many elementary schools are there within 5 miles of each other, or 10 miles of each other in several sections of this county. But to do some of that, we're gonna have to come up with some money, because sometimes all of those, you can't put them all into one, you can't. So, but that's the theory, that if you have to live on a budget, then you will make the decisions necessary.
Or make the decisions to tax your residents more.
Right.
Right.
Which right now, it's like, what your budget passes isn't necessarily relate to what the taxpayers pay.
Right.
Because of the
Right.
state, so this is trying to make a tighter connection. And then there's a whole formula in Act 73. If you are gonna do that excess tax, how much goes to the state? And how much do you get to keep? And that depends on your communities and what the lowest property tax town is of the state. So you benefit if you have a bigger district population to work with on your. If you're gonna try to raise more money for your taxes to keep the small school.
Money you raise over and above the foundation, you can raise it's 5 or 6%. It's brigamized. It's,
And that's something that might get worked on this session.
Brigham.
It means
Brigham.
Brigham.
You just made up an
Brigham.
the Brigham decision.
Yeah.
You turned it into a verb.
Yes.
We don't know, because there
Yeah.
hasn't been another
Can I
level
have a
since.
follow up to this? Scott?
Yeah,
Okay,
indeed.
the reason that I
Yes.
find this confusing is because what, we currently, our neighboring district, our surrounding district, actually, Wash Central, their per pupil spending is higher than ours right now, and their tax rate is higher than Montpelier's anyway. I don't know about Roxbury's anymore, but so it's confusing to me that the foundation, that we would but maybe that's how the foundation formula will work, because anyway, if we were to merge right now, how would Montpelier and Roxbury be taking on this larger tax burden that Wash Central currently has, or would Wash Central take on the Montpelier-Roxbury? That's the part that's confusing when you say the foundation formula would make it logical to merge in order to save money somehow.
At the simplest way, it
Yes.
flip flops what happens.
Right.
So right now, the only mechanism to control our spending is voters in our
Right.
community, right? They could say yay or nay.
Right.
And if they say yay, then we're gonna get that amount.
Yep.
And so is CVU, and so is MMU,
Yep.
and so, you know, and so is Northfield, and whatever the amount they ask for, that's what we get. So the state is responsible for raising that amount of money.
Yep.
So that we all get what, that our voters have approved. So the voters are the only mechanism. It switches it, so the state is the mechanism that says, this is the amount of money you're gonna get.
Yep.
So if we merged, we get this amount of money based on the base
Number
weight
of students and weight.
that Senator Cummings was talking about, as well as the weight on top of it, the
Uh-huh.
most simplest.
Yeah.
Without getting into
It's
the
all
weeds.
very simplistic at this point.
Okay.
We know there's who gets the debt. It's just.
Yeah.
What happens to labor contracts? There's 1,001 issues, places where there's water systems and that we don't deal with in the big city. There's no way it's going to happen in the governor's timeframe. I'm hoping that a second homes tax will give us some relief. But at the rate ed spending is going up, if we catch up. And if there's another solution out there, I wish someone could help us,
That the governor will support.
Yeah. At this point, just be aware that after July 1st, if we don't go home and there is no budget, there is no continuing resolution allowed in Vermont. Everything shuts down.
Wow.
That includes the state parks, which means we will have a whole lot of irate tourists. Everything stops. If you have a little money in your budget, you can continue to run through that reserve. But it is a very heavy weight but we have gone to June 28th. With this governor,
Yep.
What
Did you
he'll
have
do on the
other-
29th, I don't know.
Did you have other questions you wanted to ask?
I kind of wanted to ask where CTE is.
Yes, yeah, I would like to
But-
hear
Don't
that,
know.
yeah.
So I mean,
Don't know.
the governor talked about it today in his speech, and there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of support for it, but I think if there'd be like other school districts, and I don't know if the per pupil. Dollar amount would be different because it's a CTE school or a CTE program. But so, yeah, I'm not sure what it is and
CTE, special ed and transportation costs were left out of this whole discussion with trust me, we will deal with it. But it is another just little area. One of the discussions was doing the districts around this.
Right.
CTEs. And I don't know why that was done. Next week, we will be hearing from, I think next week, we've got people that did that study, the districting study coming in to talk to us, and we'll find out why they didn't do that. There's a lot of support for CTE, but I haven't seen that translate into money.
Nominally, there's support.
Right, vocally, right.
If we could print money, we'd be fine.
I have a question because again, sort of nominally, this has been about improving student outcomes at a lower cost. And yet the work so far has only been about the cost. And it feels a little bit like tax reform disguised as education reform. And at the same time, there is a big challenge with transparency around student outcomes. You were saying already, Senator Cummings, like, you don't know what test scores he's referring to. We don't see those test scores. We get the VT cap results for our own students 9 to 12 months late at this point, and that's actually an improvement over the last time, like when I started as a school board member. And so we're not doing a very good job about to know whether or not our system is working to provide that more than adequate or excellent education. And so what work could be done to ensure that at the school board level, all the way up to the agency of education, so that community members, parents, caregivers can know how we're doing?
One of the biggest frustrations I've heard, and one of the chairs for the redistricting task force is on my committee. She sits next to me, and she's on it, health and welfare with me. Is the Department of Education is severely understaffed. We all know that. We're all suspicious that the way governors balance their budgets with vacancy savings. The inability to get any kind of data out of the department is difficult. It's impossible. Their one data cruncher retired, and the last I heard, he was back working part-time. I don't know, is he still there? They don't have the staff they need to do the work that needs to be done. So we don't get the information we need. My daughter on the school board has spoken to me about the lack of testing coming in time. And she can be a very forceful speaker. We know that there seems to be an effort to at least increase some staffing over there. The Secretary of Education may not know a lot about, her specialty is curriculum development. And I'm kind of hopeful they may be able, to move there. I was surprised to find out we don't have a high school graduation requirement statewide. You can set your own. And so that's how we end up with students who are valedictorians who don't have the classes to accept their green and gold scholarships from UVM.
Wow.
Or they have to have parents who are wise enough to know they need to take them online. So we have a problem there. I'm sure you have a problem there. The legislature has a problem there. And I don't have any staff I can send out.
Me, it's the same question a lot of legislators had.
Yeah.
That very question. And that's why a lot of it did vote for it, because it was just about facts and it didn't have the education part.
You'll hear testimonies where like we forget to talk about students in it, right? Like,
Yeah.
And just because you're merging schools and you can go from 4 languages to 17, we're not focused on teachers necessarily and how do you elevate them to provide a better product there? We were talking about their salaries, and the governor said some make this much and some make this much today. We got to get it like this, it's not raise all boats.
Yeah.
We got to bring some down.
Yeah.
So it creates winners and losers, right? And we'll lose some very good teachers if it goes to fruition.
It's just.
It's not coming down and it shouldn't come down.
No.
Yeah. No.
They should not.
Well. Any other thoughts or questions?
I would just say, I'm sure I will see at least Senator Cummings and her committee at some point.
Next week, I think.
Let us all know, even if you're testifying in finance, it's always good to hear from you, Libby, and your opinion on what you see happening in the building.
And we can give cell phone numbers if there's someone you need to talk to in the building. One advantage we have is it's in Montpelier, right? So if you want to get up there, talk to somebody, we'll do our best to make sure it happens.
Senator Pershing was able to hear our 5 brilliant students who were here earlier. And so I think their voice is really important in whatever conversation people are having. So the more you can encourage your colleagues to get kids, if you need kids, I got them, and they're very articulate.
They say that they were gonna be.
They're trying.
Yeah, they're working on it.
Awesome.
The other piece I would say, thank you for saying I don't have any hard numbers. I would demand that they do have modeling that is accurate and based on real numbers and not hopes and dreams of numbers. And I think the teacher salary is the biggest number that you all need, because that's the biggest cost driver. That's going to be the biggest cost driver, because it's not gonna come from the middle. It will raise. So, and the people in, Harwood, who are our highest paid teachers here in Central Vermont, are not gonna say we'll stay the same either. So we need to be using numbers that are realistic as we're thinking about this piece, because it will drive hard choices. I would argue we don't have a shortage of teachers. We have too many, because we have too many school buildings. And so if you consider it that way, we probably have either too many or just the right amount. And so how do we get those real numbers so that we can actually make decisions that are based on facts, or at least as close to facts as we can get, rather than based on somebody's hope or a consultants from Colorado's idea of what national norms are. That's just not good policy, as you all know. So that's the hard part of this job, I think, that we have ahead of us. One of the hard parts.
I think if I could just piggyback on Libby's thing, as this is going, if there's any way you can say like, okay, you guys are thinking about this idea, what does that mean for our school district? You know what I mean? Because it's also vague, and a lot of times people are just talking about the smallest schools and whatnot. So as we're going along, and if this idea is getting traction, well, what does that mean for us? Because it's often hard to tell. So that'd be helpful. Let's see.
Well, but it'd be Montpelier.
Thank you again.
Really appreciate it, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for
Thanks for hanging out with us.
It was long.
Yes, you've got more ahead of you. I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. So is there a motion to adjourn? Thanks, Jake. Is there a second? Okay, all right, Rhett, thank you. Any discussion? Anybody opposed? All those in favor? All those in favor? We're out of here. Hey.
I wanna stay.
I'll be around. Sure, never stay.